So Bree, thank you very much for doing that. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. Okay.
Hi, everybody. I
Paul's
wanted
here.
to introduce our speakers so that we can keep on track here. I'm going to very briefly introduce Ron and Lynn, and they will tell their stories. And Josie, hello. I never got to meet you before. It's nice to meet you. And is Jamie with us too? You're Jamie. Gotcha. You just happen to be using Josie's machine. All right. So Ron and Lynn, I'll let you begin. Don't forget to unmute yourself, Lynn. On the lower left corner of your screen is a button that says mute. Just click on that and it will unmute. There you go.
Got it.
Good.
There we are.
All right.
Sorry. Go ahead, Ron. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Paul. How you doing?
It's great
Hi,
to see you
hello,
again.
class. Hi, class.
As you know, Paul, we have a double story. 2009, day after Christmas, I got sick with pneumococcal pneumonia. I was laying in bed, looking at the telephone wires, freezing, cold, shivering. The day before, I was a walker runner, and I did my best 6 miles I've ever done. And I had pneumococcal pneumonia. How weird is that? But anyways, I'm laying in bed, and I said to my wife, something's going on with me. I think you better call for an ambulance. She removed the covers. She saw that my whole body was mottled. She said I took a shower. I have no recall of that. Next thing I know, the ambulance is there. Within 1 hour, I was on a vent. And then I remember going to the hospital, the doors opening up like a TV movie, and the doors opened up and my lights went out. I was in a coma for 2 months. I had severe septic shock, multi-organ failure. I was told much later, 55% of my body was hard. They used a medicine on me called Zygris, not even used anymore today. But anyways, my body is scarred, total dialysis. I was on it. They said I would probably my kidneys would never function again. And the best thing happened to me, I was literally saved physically and spiritually. The coolest thing is I woke up, repented all my sins. I just had this great need to do that and literally changed my life. And when I woke up, I was like, I'm amputated. And you're seeing it, but you're not kind of getting it because you're in such a drug-induced coma. And I was just becoming more of a runner, and I'm like, what am I going to do with this? And the amazing thing is I had a dream that was horrible, that I was being pulled into the pit of hell. Another dream was that I was standing on stage giving a talk, and I thought it was about my life's journey being in prosthetics, and that was only a small part of it. Now I look at it as it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Within a year in prosthetics, I was back on the track. I was up to 6 miles. Still have some pretty serious pain issues, but even with all that, we've done more in the last 10 years than I thought. My life was over when I woke up. But enough about me, and want to go to the next story. And I'm telling you this because this happened the day after Christmas 2009, and 7 months later, I'm going to let my wife tell you about the second part of our story.
Hello. We're go back and forth quite a bit. And we're a little rusty. Thanks to COVID, we haven't done this for a while in person. So since last year.
Since last year.
But anyhow, I will explain briefly. Ron suffered from pneumococcal pneumonia. It was the most horrific experience. I'm a nurse as well. I worked PACU at the Pocono Medical Center in East Stroudsburg, and I've never seen anybody get so ill, critically ill, so quickly. It was an absolute nightmare. As we got him to the ER, I was told that within an hour or I'm sorry, he was only going to have a 1% chance of survival and would not make it through the night. Obviously, God has allowed him to be here, and Ron has a purpose, and I'm very grateful for that. So needless to say, when he got home in March of 2010, came home a bilateral low knee amputee. Still had a lot of things to deal with his health, but he recovered beautifully. So Ron and I decided, well, you know what? Our tests are over. There can't possibly be anything coming our way because he survived severe septic shock. His kidneys are great. His heart is fine. His lungs are fine. God is good. Well, here comes November. My home in the Poconos with Ron, we had 2 children, a daughter, Rachel, and a son, Ethan. And it was around Halloween, November 1st, 2nd, and my son went to a movie. And back in 2010, the movie that was popular was called Jackass. And if you're 20, you get it. It is silly, but that's what he went to see. So Ethan was coming home from that movie, and less than a mile from our house, he was hit by a drunk driver. I hope you can see this picture. This is our son, and he was coming home, and as Ethan slowed to turn, a drunk driver decided to pass him. So the impact of the vehicle crash was severe. Ethan had a fractured neck and severe head trauma, and succumbed to those injuries 12 hours later at Lehigh Valley. I need to share, as I said earlier, I am a nurse too. I'm an RN. I studied or got my diploma back in the day in the 70s at Reading Hospital. So since Ron was not working and we needed to keep up our insurance and stuff, I took a lot of on-call. So being a PACU nurse, I could work call, and so I took a whole lot of 11 to 7 call, and if I would call in for an appy or whatever, it was good because it was overtime. So here I come to the night of November 2nd, and the phone rang, and I'm like, okay, cool, they're gonna have me go in, I'll make a couple bucks. So I get ready for work, and I come to the intersection where our home is, and there's emergency vehicles everywhere. There's ambulance, fire trucks, cars, everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, something really bad's happened. I better, hopefully I can get through, which they allowed me to go to work. And then I'm like, oh, Ethan's van wasn't in the driveway. And as I passed the intersection, I saw a vehicle on its roof. I later learned that vehicle was Ethan. So needless to say, when you put all these facts together, I did pass the accident where my son actually was. I had continued on the road to my job, which wasn't too far away, and I walked through the ER, and as I'm walking through, I pass a girl who's registering a patient's name. As I walk by, and she goes, 31 Lake Valhalla, I'm like, why are you typing my address? And she goes, well, who are you? And I told her, she goes, oh my, she goes, you need to come with me. And that's the moment I found out that overturned car was Ethan, and that he was already on a vent. He was already critically ill, and they were getting him ready to transfer to Allentown via medevac. I worked with one of the trauma docs in the PACU, and he said, look, Lynn, your son's been in a really bad accident, and he's on a ventilator with no sedation. Do you understand? And I quickly did understand that that meant that he had fractured neck and severe head trauma, and he was gone in 12 hours. So our journey here, I'm going to let Ron share some of this. Oh, and let me show you his picture one time. That's Ethan. Good looking boy.
So on our journey, what we found out, haven't told the story for a long time, but we would write letters.
Oh, you didn't even tell about the donation.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about, the donations. But Ethan was the most gifted out person in the state of Pennsylvania. 9 solid organs. He saved 7 lives. And what we prayed a lot about it. We would write letters, and we were very anxious of meeting somebody. We were so blessed that we were 6 out of 7. So when we got 6 recipients, so we got 6 letters to people that returned their letters, and I wanted all 7, so I did what was called the Daniel's fast, and I fasted for 6 days, and on the 3rd day, I'll never forget, we get this letter, and the person starts out saying, kind of describing who he was. And our son was a musician. He was a drummer, amazing drummer. And this guy was my age, and he had a bowel reconstruction. And turns out he was a drummer, and our son was a drummer. And that, go ahead.
I just want to backtrack super quick. I want to explain that when Ethan was pronounced at Lehigh Valley, it wasn't until that point that Gift of Life stepped in. And in fact, as a nurse, I was being a mom that day. I wasn't a nurse. I was like, Ron and I were approached about agreeing to organ donation. I wanted to make sure you understood that. And also, Ethan had put this on his own license, and they had his license, and they said, look, your son had, organ donation. Would you agree to donate his organs? So I just wanted to backtrack.
They did that just a couple of months before. And Ethan was poetry writer. He was in college. So he was a thinker. So he put thought into this. So we agreed to do that. But as time went by, it took about a year till we actually connected with anybody. And the first person we connected with was the Cron family.
No, Alberta.
I'm wrong, Alberta Peters. And I thought that was interesting, what God showed us with her. Alberta Peters, Lynn's dad's name is Albert Peter. That's kind of strange. And she was a liver transplant. And she got part of the liver, and then Josie received the other part of the liver. Josie, her name was interesting to me. She was 3 months old, and I'll let Josie describe, her mom describe that to you. But the interesting part was I have an aunt, Josie, and Lynn has a grandmother. Her name was Josie. And then Ellie, our son, hated math. He went to a Catholic school for the first 6 years. And every day he would come stomping his feet and saying how much he hated Catholic school, and he did not do well with math. He was tutored for 2 or 3 years in math. Ellie, turns out she's a math teacher. And that was interesting because she got after receiving, what did she receive? She received bilateral lungs. That was interesting. It was like he was giving back to people. And Ellie, we got to meet and got to know her, just like Jamie and Alberta, we got to know her. But the cool thing is Ellie got back to tutoring, and Ethan needed to be tutored for 3 years. So I thought that was pretty amazing.
When it comes to the idea of what happened too, when Ethan's accident happened, it was such a shock. You have a 20-year-old college student who just went to a movie, and within hours you're told that he's not going to survive. So I'm very much an advocate of any staff member, once they realize that the situation may lead to a possible donation, please remember that the family, it's the last thing on a lot of people's minds. You're just really numb.
You're like walking underwater.
So when it came to the fact that we were approached about it, we were given plenty of time to discuss it with, our daughter, and we had all kinds of people there that were visiting Ethan as well. It's a very interesting procedure. Obviously, there is a brain death determination that's done via scans and such, and then that time of death is pronounced. But then obviously patient is kept on a ventilator and kept, hydrated and such. And there's many, 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 many testings that they do to prepare the person to recover the organs. It took most of that afternoon and into the next day. A lot of the recovery of organs wasn't done until the following day. It's also on our end, we were asked a great deal of questions about Ethan's health. Being 20, he was super healthy.
And a vegan.
He was a vegan. He had no medical conditions whatsoever. So he passed with flying colors. So the only thing they could not recover from him was his corneas due to the head trauma. However, we did have 9 solid organs, like Ron said. Also, God bless, he did have the ability to donate tissue, bone, and vessel, which we got a chance to go to the there's a center in Oliphant, which is outside of Scranton, and they bank tissue, and it's fascinating if you guys ever get a chance to look that up. But he he helped not only the 7 people with solid organ, he also helped through tissue, bone, and vessel
I think it was
donation.
100 to 150 people.
Right. So I tell you, in our hearts, this young man's a hero.
He's our hero.
I mean, no parent ever expects anything remotely like this to happen. When it comes to why we said yes, because we felt it would bring something really wonderful out of something so tragic. And I can guarantee you that wonderful thing has never stopped been blessing us. And we will see him again. I know that for a fact in my heart that Ethan's in heaven. I will share with you too, please don't drink and drive. Please don't text and drive. It doesn't take long for somebody's eyes to go off the road and someone to be really critically hurt. This happened on November 2nd, 2010. And trust me, there's not a day goes by that he's not in our minds and our hearts. And also the person who sadly caused this accident. He spent time in jail. He spent time on parole and very sadly has reoffended. And so you just have to know that in this world, these things can happen. Ron and I are very blessed to have a beautiful daughter, son-in-law, 2 pretty little granddaughters, and a new one coming too, a new little grandson. So, you know, there's different things that come in your life that bless you, but you still never forget the tragedy as well. I'll let you speak.
And a little bit about Andrew that took our son's life. He was a year older than Ethan. He was valedictorian of his class. He served 5 years in prison, came out. After his parole was over, we forgave him. We actually would go into prisons and speak on forgiveness and hope. And we were at our church, and somebody asked him the question, "Are you sober now?" And I was feeling something was different about him because his dad drove him from the Poconos to Lancaster County. That's where we're living now. And there's something different about him. And somebody said, "Are you sober now?" And he skirted around the question. And here he just got a DUI days before that. We did speak at state police at Penn State in Hazleton, Operation Nighthawk, about 120 officers, and he was supposed to be with us, but he was arrested before that. He's still sitting in jail from 2000, what year was that? 18, and he's still waiting for his trial. Still didn't come up because of COVID. So we're still dealing with that.
I know that there's a very beautiful little girl named Josie who's going to be talking real soon as well. Excuse me. I get the dog out of here.
Josie and her mother, Jamie, we got to know them very early on. We got close with them. We come get together for birthday parties, family get-togethers. They became part of our family, and we became part of their family. That's a beautiful blessing out of this.
I will share too that since working with Gift of Life, they ask us to speak. We're called a donor family, and it takes a lot of time to get there because hi Jamie, you don't expect any of these things, but the Gift of Life program helps you a great deal on what to say, how to say it, what group to speak to, and also we had to follow a criminal element because of being a crime victim. So I'm really grateful. A lot of those things are more in the past and we can focus more on the future, but we're here for questions. We're not going to go anywhere because we want to see Jamie and Josie.
Hi, Jamie.
Hello.
Hi, Ron. Hi, Lynn.
Hello.
Is it my turn now?
Yeah, so go right ahead. You can pick it up from there, and then we'll have some time for questions.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm Jamie. I'm the mother, and the recipient is indisposed at this moment. She'll be back in just 1 second. So you guys will meet Josie and she'll hang out with us here. But I'm going to read through because I know if I don't read it, then I'll get on bunny trails and you won't catch it all. So we'll start from the beginning. I'm Jamie and I'm Josie Cron's mom. Josie was 4 months old when she received her transplant and she is now 10. A few weeks after Josie was born, we noticed that she started turning yellow. And so we took her to our pediatrician who kept an eye on her and we continued to go for well visits. No one thought anything. They did bilirubin tests and her bilirubin lowered, and then it went back up and it lowered again, but everybody seemed to think it was okay. And then at her 4-month well check, that's when everything kind of went shaky. Once we got there, she was pretty yellow. I'm first time mom. I hung out with kids. I was an LED teacher. I didn't, like no one was overly concerned. But when we got to the pediatrician, she said that her organs felt enlarged and she was quite yellow still. And so she sent us immediately for ultrasounds and lab work and stuff, which is very intimidating as a parent for babies and lab work. And everybody knows everything's a lot smaller and everything's scary at that point. We got the results back around dinner time. And our pediatrician said, go down to CHOP immediately. So we packed our bags for a couple days, figuring, all right, we'll stay here for a few days and see what happens. And that was not the case. So walking into an ED is intimidating for anybody. So now when you have no idea what's going on with your kid, you get a little bit more frightened. So we spent one night in the ED, and that's where we met a tech, John Perry, and he was fabulous. We spent 2 days in a PICU, and then we got transferred to the GI floor. Initially, they were worried about her blood clotting factors, but once that was under control, the mystery of her liver failure was then up in arms there. So they did test after test after test, trying to figure out what's going on with her. We were new parents. We have a family with very little health problems. I'm a diabetic, and that's pretty much it. So after that, all was well. But this whole situation was new to all of us. We had just gotten her onto a schedule. We just got to know who she was. So everything, like she was just starting to laugh. She was just starting to come alive. She's only 4 months. So everything was new. So we met a whole bunch of new doctors, and now everybody's trying to help our little girl out. Each one came along with loving attitudes and hopes that they might have the answer that we needed to help make her better. However, as the days progressed, Josie just got worse and worse. One thing I'm going to skip through because I don't want to take up a whole bunch of time, but one thing that was really important to us was we were in a time frame where everything was very scary for us, and thing after thing was happening. And this is Josie.
Hi, Josie.
Thing after thing was very scary for us, and everything was new, and everybody's coming at our kid. And as soon as the door shut, somebody else was coming in. But the nurses there that came to take care of Josie, they were super important to us. It was a very happy place. We were down at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So it was the nursing staff was very happy, and they were good for conversation and, like little tidbits to kind of settle us down, which is what I needed. I needed everybody to not be so hyped, about everything. We got to get this done. We got to get this done. I need you to settle down and, okay, let's try this and see if it works. Let's try this and see if it works. And our nursing staff did a great job at that. One of our nurses that was probably the most helpful, her name was Jackie, and she was the most influential, caring, loving, and bold nurse I have ever met in my life. And she knew how to help us with our roles as parents at CHOP and give us the advice that we needed to hear. She tutored the other nursing students that were there. And so she was an excellent teacher and not afraid to be bold at us. I'll talk about her in a little bit again. The care of all the nurses and doctors there didn't just stop with Josie, because when you're dealing with a kid, you're not just dealing with a kid, you're dealing with a kid and then some luggage of family. So you have mom who's like flipped out because she's trying to do the motherly thing, dad who's trying to settle down mom, and it just, it can be a whole huge mess. So you got a lot more than just the baby that you're dealing with. But we had, I never left Josie's side. I stayed at the hospital the whole time. She was admitted in October 14th. We left for a weekend. They said, to be honest, I think they sent us home because they weren't sure if she would make it. I think they wanted to give us one last hoopla and hurrah at home for the weekend before things got really rocky. That was, we went in October 14th, and it was the 22nd that we came home, and then we came back because she couldn't breathe. She had so much ascites in her abdomen that it was pushing up on her lungs. So, and Josie's a liver transplant recipient, so that y'all know that. So it was pushing up on her lungs, and so she couldn't breathe. So we had to take her back because we were scared. Right. See, she hasn't heard a lot of this stuff because I did a lot of this stuff when she was younger, and she didn't really care. And now that she's 10, she's like, oh, is that we've done a bit more discussing with it now. So anyway, nursing staff, going back to the nursing staff and dealing with family that's there, they kind of made our CHOP room our new apartment. So they made sure that we had a place to sleep. I was never left alone. My sister was with me, or my husband, or my best friend, who is pretty much my sister. She was there. Somebody always spent the night with me to make sure I didn't go crazy. And, you know, and just to kind of be a support system for all of us. They gave us comfy places to stay. They made sure we had pillows, we had towels, if we needed a snack or food or whatever. There's one nurse from the PICU. When I left the PICU, I was actually, because we were there for 2 or 3 days, I was actually really sad because I bonded with this nurse, Nancy. And then I had to leave, but she came back up to visit me. And that's important. It's important to a parent to know that you remember them and that you remember their kid, because if you're just another person that's on the block, you don't feel like they're caring for your kid. I want people to know who I am and know who she is and love us. And that's, you know, that's important. So that when Nancy came up, I was actually in the shower and I heard her voice through the door and I screamed out, "Nancy, don't go anywhere." And I quickly threw a towel on and, you know, threw some clothes on and ran out. And she met with us and talked with us for a little bit, which was great. And that was huge to me. And actually about 4 years later, because I didn't see Nancy again after that day. And 4 years later, I was in the elevator and I turned, you know, like I entered the elevator and I caught somebody's eye, and it was Nancy. And she remembered Josie still, which was, you know, it's really cool.
Beautiful.
So then October 25th, so we went from October 14th being admitted, October 25th, we decided this isn't going anywhere. And this is only getting worse. So we asked to speak to transplant because it was kind of thrown on the table while they were testing for biliary atresia, asking me if my husband and I were related. Did we have any other liver things that were going on? Because, you know, there's all kinds of fun stuff that goes on with the liver, and none of it. We had none of it. So we had the gut instinct that we were going to need a transplant. So we asked to speak with transplant, and Kate Anderer, she's one of the nurse practitioners for the transplant team. She came, and it was one of the, like Lynn said, it's one of the hardest, weirdest, like surreal kind of situations that you're in. Because you're like, do I really have to do this? Like, what is going on? Like, can't we just go home, you know, kind of thing. Click, you know, make it all go back. But it's obviously not the case. Kate was very calm, and she was very clear on what was happening and what would happen if that were the case. And then we started talking with the head of the transplant, liver transplant team, which was Dr. Elizabeth Rand. And she started taking over for Josie's care after that. And the liver lady, that's what we like to call her, she's still spearheading all of Josie's stuff presently, which I'll tell you about later. So we put Josie on the list on October 31st. And I will show you what she looked like, because, you know, pictures are always a good thing. This was Josie.
That's me.
That was you.
Jimmy's.
And you can see her little eyes are like so yellow. It was insane. And
I overdosed
it's like, it's very, you know, very yellow, and just, so the whole thing was just great. But looking back on it, I see all these things and I'm like, how did I not, but you're stuck in a situation. You don't see it. You don't understand it. You don't realize how bad it is. So once they hit that, we decided that we needed to do something quickly, because she was really progressing off, like digressing, not progressing, awful. Like within those 15 days, her bilirubin went from like 9 to, I think it was 24 or something like that, 20, 26, somewhere crazy. So it was very crazy. And a liver is a great organ to have fail, because you can have a live donor, like a kidney. So my husband and my sister-in-law, Patty, they became possible live donors. So they were being taken away and being tested to see if they had all the right piping for it. And I was sitting on the sidelines because I'm a diabetic and nobody likes diabetic organs. So I had to, you know, just kind of chill, which I was the perfect size and the perfect everything, so blood type, everything for her, but they couldn't use me. So I got to sit and watch and hang out, which was nice. We had good bonding time. So anyway, being a woman of faith and knowing that God can move mountains, I begged for him to save my little girl. However, this situation was the hardest thing I ever had to deal with, because what do you pray for? No matter how you look at it, it's a lousy situation. Josie needed a transplant. So either Paul and Patty were going to have to go under, and they were going to lose part of their organs, or someone was going to have to die in order to save my baby. And how do pray for that? How do you comprehend that? Like you can't, like, there's no, I was just dealing with not dealing, that's the wrong word. I was just talking with a friend whose daughter, because you get to meet other transplant recipients along the way. And her daughter just had a heart transplant 39 days ago. I think it's 41 now. And it's hard as the recipient because you're realizing like, okay, somebody passed away and now I'm living because of that. Like, how do you justify that? There is no real justification necessarily, but you know that there's a bigger plan out there and you have to trust that. But we can talk about that later too. I remember the night that we got the phone call, I was in Josie's crib, literally crawled in her crib with her, and I was singing to her. And Paul got the phone call on his way home. And he called me and he's like, James, they found a liver for Josie. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I had maybe slept about 12 hours in 2 weeks. So there was not a whole lot of thought that was going on in my brain. So to get that whole thing, like, then it was a split second of you're super happy and then you're incredibly sad. And then you're super happy again. And then all the nurses are flying in and everybody's all going, like, okay, this is happening. This is happening. But then it's the hurry up and wait game. So we got called at 11 p.m. and they got around about maybe midnight. And then they didn't take Josie until 4:20 the next afternoon. So it was a little crazy on how like the timing worked, because we're like, okay, she's going, but it was not the case at all. So prep your families on that, because you kind of get like stoked about it, but you still got a long wait to go. So we waited for what seemed like an eternity for the liver to get to the hospital. And then at 4:20, I gave my baby her final kiss. She was leaking ascites fluid. So I had a sweatshirt on and I was literally covered from my chest down to like above my knees in just her fluid, because I wouldn't let go of her. And I was so tired and I was just rocking her. Like it was like the Rain Man rocking thing, like where you're just, all you can do is just sit and rock and hold. And, like they were coming in and asking me questions, and I can't even remember those questions, but I just remember saying, Lord, keep me awake enough so that I can handle this. Because you don't know, are these your last moments with your kid? Like you just don't know. Could she die in that, am I holding her for the very last time? So they pried her out of my hands, and I told the nurse, we call her twerp, and you need to pet her face and you need to talk to her softly and don't call her Josephine because her name is Josie. And, like she likes this, and put her blankie near her, and, all those things. Because that care has now gone from mom to you as the nurse. And now you are the one that has to care for my baby. So I expect you to do every one of my things that I'm asking you to do. And you have to make sure that you do them, because you're taking me out of the picture now, and you could be the last human that she sees. So you make sure that you do that. I'm sorry. Okay, so anyway, so keep that in mind as you're dealing with these people, because now you're getting all the emotional aspects of what's going on in everybody's head as we're both talking to you, because I can see that we're both crying. Okay, so anyway, so now my best friend then took me, she like dragged me, my husband took me out, and then they dragged me out, and Ashley literally stripped me down because I did not have the ability to undress myself then. Then it was all the emotional letdown now, because, she's left me, and now what do I do? And so she literally stripped me down and threw me into the shower. And then, it was Auntie Ashley. And then every hour they actually came and told us what was going on with Josie, which was fantastic. So in that time frame, so she left us at 4:20 and she came back to us at about 1:30 in the morning. And in that time frame, when I saw her again, she went from a pumpkin, you guys saw that picture, to a yellow squash. And I will also show you, this is kind of cool. This is her old liver. That's what it looks like. And then this is her new liver. For those of you who may not get into a OR, that was Ethan's. So that is what made it into her body and what allows her to live now. So this is what she looked, I think, about 2 days post-transplant. When they come out, they look like a Christmas tree with every tube all over the place. And so it's very emotional for a mom because you can't touch your baby now. Like they're intubated, they've got stuff everywhere, wires all over the place. You're frightened to go near them, but all you want to do is hold them because that's what you're supposed to do as a mom. So I couldn't hold her for a couple days. And the one nurse that was on the PICU floor, she had to weigh Josie. And so in order to weigh her, you had to lift her because they didn't have a weighing bed for whatever reason. So you had to lift her up, and then she held her to me, and I held her arms straight out, held her, I got on the scale first, and then I held her, and it was like, oh, I have her back, like, this is okay, kind of thing, which was so great. And it's so important for that because, if you, some of you may not be moms and some of you may be moms, but there really is no other bond in this world. And so you guys can go play if you want to. It's a little, crazy to have your most prized possession now, in shambles. So at any rate, we had a lot of crazy things that happened in the PICU with us. She had to get reintubated. There was all kinds of craziness that happened. We had a resident that we did not like, who was, he was out to kind of like, I'm going to solve the mystery of Josie Cron. And we're still trying to solve that mystery 10 years later. So he wasn't going to do it. And as nurses and as doctors who are, around and seeing that, just keep an eye on that because that's not an emotional thing that parents need at that point. Like he almost went into a sterile situation. And again, the Rain Man thing of the rocking, kind of thing. And I grabbed my nurse's arm and I was like, Amy, if you don't get him out, I'm going to tackle him. And that's it, because you don't have that mental capacity, at that point to control everything, things that come out of your mouth or, rudeness or whatever. And I'm a very sweet person, but when you mess with my children, I don't become very sweet all that time. So I try to be respectful, but you just have to be, you have to be aware of what's happening around. I always tell my kids, be aware of what's around you so that you know what's happening and how to deal with it. And you nurses are really important in this aspect. You doctors are important, but the doctors hold it there, but the nurses are the glue. Like it's like the neck and the head, kind of thing. You nurses it's so important in translating things back and forth from doctor to patient to parents. And you're the emotional support that a parent needs. You're the physical support. I need food or drink. You're the one who provides the medication. Like you guys are so important in a lot of different aspects in the care there. So anyway, so that being said, then we spent another month in the hospital. We made it back up to the GI floor to our family up there. And family meaning our nurse's family. And it was so great. They had a little bed prepared for us up there because, we could kind of settle down a little bit. Josie did go through a bout of rejection while she was there, which they did with steroids. Rejection is a very scary word to recipients. You don't understand that, this could be a possibility. You're kind of like, oh, good, they have a new organ, all's going to be well. And you know that it's there, but when you hear rejection, you automatically think, okay, that's it, it's over, I need a new one. And obviously that's not the case. Josie had a bout of rejection like a week or two after she had her transplant. And then she had another bout when she was in kindergarten. So about 5 years ago. And again, I was petrified when Hamida called me and said, James, Josie's liver enzymes are elevated. We think she's going through rejection. And I totally panicked and lost it on the phone. Like, Hamida, we can't do this. She can't lose the organ. It's got to work right. Make her liver work better. And she was like, whoa, settle down. Like, it's not going anywhere. We just give her some meds and all's well, So there's a lot of different steps that go along with that. So you have to make sure parental units know that too. And then, so I have 4 kids. Josie's the oldest. And then Cece was born 18 months later. 18 months later. So I was pregnant with Cece when I got Lynn's letter. And I was about ready to go into the hospital to deliver her. I had scheduled C-sections for my kids. And so I wrote back to Lynn and Ron and, before I had Cece. And then once I came out of the hospital, it was like, I don't know, Lynn, what did it take? Like a week for you to write back? Not even. And then there was another letter that was in my mailbox.
We're persistent.
Right. And then, like then after, it takes me a little bit longer to write back, or I'm a professional at writing back and then I forget to mail it. So it took me a little bit more time, but we wrote back. And I think both of us, Lynn, right? Both of us kind of put like little things in there. So Gift of Life gets the letter and then they read through it and they kind of like mess with it a little bit to take out the personal information.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. It's in a good way. It's meant for our protection. But they could see that both of us kept trying to throw things in there so that we could try and figure out who each other were. And we knew enough about organ donation to know, like, if it was flying to CHOP, then it was a decent time away. If it was being driven to CHOP, we knew it was close by. So we honestly, from that deduction and the internet, kind of knew who Lynn and Ron were prior to. Because the internet is out there, and so is news. So we had ideas of who these people might be, but we didn't know who they were.
That's kind of funny. That's kind of funny. In one of your letters, you said something that made it sound like you were in the country. So I kept on thinking you were in Lancaster County.
Yeah, and where we live on a farm. So like we're up in Bucks County and on a farm. So yeah, so like we weren't very far from each other at all. We were like an hour away, kind of thing
at the most.
So finally, Gift of Life called me up and they're like, listen, James, you guys keep passing notes back and forth and you're giving away too much information and it's not worth us doing this anymore. Are you okay if it's clear that you guys want to talk to each other? Are you okay if we just hand them your phone number? And I'm like, firm yes, go for it. So they did that. They sent the letter in the mail and then I think we both got it on the same day. And Lynn had called. I said to Paul, I'll call her tonight. It'll be fine. And I, like before I even got a chance, my phone was ringing and we were talking, which was fantastic. And then we decided that we needed to meet up. And so we did. And it's not, see, here's what I guess because it's my personality, I don't understand why people don't do this more, but I think it's because it's harder, on some people and on different things. But we met up right away and it was an instant family meeting. So this was our first meeting. They came here to our house and we all hung out. There's a picture that Ethan, with the lighting, you can't really see it, but they brought a bunch of stuff for Josie. That was Ethan's, his blanket, that kind of thing. And that was huge. And then that sparked it. And then a few weeks later, or I guess about a month, Lynn was like, are you okay if we invite everybody and we all get together and we'll all come here? And I was like, sure, sounds great. So this is Alberta and Josie, and this was their first meeting. And I just adore this picture because it's just the happiness and the love all put in, and her liver was reunited at that point. And it was just an amazing meeting. And Ellie, I showed a picture of Ellie too, which I don't know if you guys saw it, but that's Ellie. She was the lung recipient too. And that was up at Rachel's shower. So, I guess I don't understand how people don't do that because it's my personality to make sure that family is family. And family is very important to me. And it's so huge, for that. But, what was I going to say? But so anyway, so we've now been hanging with the Warriors now for about 10 years, which is actually, it's over 10 years now, which is amazing. And we call them Aunt Lynn and Uncle Ron and Aunt Rachel. And my kids don't know any different because they've grown up that way. And actually just this past year is when we started telling Josie a little bit more, like she caught on of, a few things, and we've always taught her about her health and, that type of thing. And she's always been involved with that. But now it's more like they really understand, like they just saw her liver for the first time about 3 weeks ago, the dead one, and it was really neat for them to see that. One thing that I can say, because I was listening to the last part of the lecture that was here. I came in about 10 minutes early and was listening to it. And I don't know who the lady was that was talking, but she was talking about like the care, and they have to remember all their medications and blah, 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 blah. There is a lot of stuff that comes home with you. And your kid is on all these crazy medications. And if they're older, like if Josie had a transplant now, it would be a little easier. As a baby, there's like 9,000 things and everything's a liquid, and we had to color code everything because we couldn't keep track of it. And Ursula, what? Like, what is that? Tacro, who? You know, like you have to remember what med is what and where it goes and how it works. And she had an NG tube, so I had to learn how to put an NG tube in before I could leave the hospital. And that as a parent is really intimidating when you have to shove that huge thing down your own child's nose, into their throat, into their belly. I was telling the kids about that the other day. It's so crazy. And you're like thrown into this whole hospital world all of a sudden in like an instant, you know. Well, for us, it was an instant because we went from sick kid to transplant in 15 days. So it was an instant. I guess 17 days. It was an instant for us. You know, but there's so much that's happening and so much care that has to go on. And I had a list of other things that I wanted. There it is. Some other things, like as you take care of your patients. I was a nursing mom, and it's bigger now. Breastfeeding is a bigger thing now. You know, more people are into it. They're more into make sure you do this kind of thing. It's not for everyone, but for some people it was. And for me, that was my only way to help my kid. So make sure that the mom knows where the room is to do that. Make sure it's close by, or you bring them a pump if their kid is super sick. I was sent to, they didn't really know, and I didn't really push anything or anything like that, but I had to go to like a completely separate room. It was a closed room. There was no TV in it. They've since updated things, but I literally was falling asleep at one point in time, you know, pumping for my kid in a room, and like, it was a disaster. So, you know, like, take care of the moms too, because you're taking care of the mom as much as the kid, because they're going to help her out. Be honest with what's happening. Don't always sugarcoat everything. It's good to, I don't want to say sugarcoat. It's good to present it in a way that's not completely dismal, but you still have to make sure that you're honest with whoever it is. Because it doesn't always help to be completely optimistic all the time. Our liver lady, Dr. Rand, I'm an extremely upbeat, optimistic person. And I was like, look, she's smiling today. This is so great. And the liver lady came in and she's like, Jim, she's dying. Like, you can't keep being so happy that people think that she's doing great, because it's not going to look good. Like, you've got to be aware that she's not getting better. You know, like, this isn't happening. You've got to accept it, and we need to move on and work to get her better. And that's what I needed to hear. I needed to hear that. You guys as nurses, make sure that you're not like proud and cocky on what you're doing. It's seen, it's known, and I know we try not to be, but just be aware of what you're doing. And also, don't assume that we know. Like, everything that is your normal every day, I'm putting saline into this person, is not normal to me. It's not. I don't do that every day. I don't see the pump. I don't see the thing. I don't see, you know, an IV going in. Well, I do presently, but most parents don't see an IV going in, you know, all the time. They don't see all this stuff. So explain it and say it. Come in and be like, hey, I'm just going to do this real quick. Okay, I have to give her medication real quick. Everybody's good with that, you know, kind of thing. You're touching their kid, so make sure they know what's happening with them. You're in very close quarters. So before Josie's transplant, we were in a shared room, and that was like a disaster for me. There was somebody next door with a curtain, and they were saying, I heard the word tuberculosis. Like, I know y'all are supposed to be like, it's, you know, what is it called? HIPAA or whatever, you know, I'm not a firm believer in HIPAA. So, you know, like I mean, I am, but you know, you get what I'm saying. But there's a curtain that's obviously not shutting out what I'm hearing. So right before, this is 4 hours to her transplant, I'm hearing tuberculosis next door. The person didn't have it, but that's what I hear. And that was a disaster. And I almost went nuts. So Ashley had to talk everybody down from the edge. And it was just, you know, like, you just have to be aware of what's around you and be ready to deal with those situations. Like, hey, I know there's something next door. You need to just ignore it. Or if there's somebody that's next door to talking, be aware that you have people on the other side of the curtain. So, you know, the Wizard of Oz is over there. So just be aware he doesn't throw out his lash on you. What else? The illness thing that she said on the list of things is so true. So Josie's still dealing with that. She has a surprisingly tough immune system, regardless. I always say it's the good Norwegian genes, but she is more susceptible to stuff, and she also suffers from lymphedema, which I don't know if y'all know a lot about that, but it's swelling of her limbs, which is, it's not a common thing that a lot of people know about. And this is another thing I'll tag onto this. So when we go to the ED and when we deal with things, the one thing that drives me the most nuts is when they come in and they say, is she always this swollen? Well, that's like saying, are you always this ugly? You know, or are you always that fat? Like it's the way of which you present your question, be aware of that. Be aware of how you ask something to people. If, you know, like there's other ways to say it. Hey, looks like you have, you know, you're a little swollen here. Is that, you know, is that like your normal? Are you always that swollen? No, I don't want to say that. That's what I'm asking you not to say. But, you know, come up with another way of saying that. Is this everybody's normal here with what we've got going on here for you? You know, kind of thing. Like there's other ways to ask your questions on what's there, because just like anybody else, you know, you're still caring for the human that's there. But the illness thing is Josie caught, we live on a farm with cows and chickens, and she caught E. coli, cryptosporidium, and campylobacter all at the same time, mom of the year. So I'm very assured that I still am, but it still makes me question my ability. But so that being said, they are more prone to illnesses that are out there. And though we like to ignore that because we want to be normal, we're still not normal, whatever normal is. We're still not in that normal category. But we want to feel as normal as we can feel. Just like for me as a diabetic, I don't want you to come and be like, well, because you're a diabetic, you can't do this, 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 and this. Well, that just makes me go, I'm doing it. So, you know, make sure that you're aware of what's, be sensitive to that, you know, and be aware of what's, I always tell my kids, be aware of what's around you, be aware of what could happen from what you say. There are ramifications to everything. My nephew once said, he's like, once you say it, you can't take it back in. And so, you know, you want to make sure that what you're saying is that, and just be supportive. You know, you guys are the extended family. We have an extended family at CHOP now. So this is Josie's, her GI team that we hang out with now, and they all wore teal headbands. I don't know if you can see that, it's a little blurry, but they all wore teal headbands for her for Lymphedema Awareness Month one time when we were down there. And so your care and how you treat my kid, and I know not every kid can be treated like they are the princess of everything in the world, but you want to make them feel that way. You want to make them feel loved as they're going through that crazy time. I think I talked through everybody on everything and every aspect and babbled some more than my letter that I had written, but that's our side of it. I do a lot of the care for Josie. My husband's job is to work. And my job is to take care of everybody. And then we cross paths to make sure we're connected and, you know, and see what, you know, what's happening. So he's aware, but, you know, it's important to make sure you keep that family in contact, and if, you know, not everybody's family gets along, and I get that, but make sure there's still the contact that's there and the whole family dynamic, because you need a huge support system down there. And it's hard now with COVID. Like my dad used to come with us to all our appointments, and he can't, you know, so, you know, like it's hard with that. But you now as healthcare givers or healthcare workers are the ones that are our family. And that's how Molly is to us now. She's our GI nurse that does Josie's IV and infusions every week. And our transplant team who's with us every week presently. Because it's so important for you to be that. They have to be able to trust you. The parents have to be able to know what you're saying and understand what you're saying. So there you have it.
So Josie, thanks you. Jamie, thank you very much for telling your story. Is Josie available? She clearly had something to say.
Come here.
And I would love her to say what she has to get off her chest.
She's coming. She likes to make the little remarks every time I talk. She's like the little Jiminy Cricket on your ear kind of thing.
I have a 10-year-old also.
And where she gets that, Jamie.
Right?
And then I want the students to be thinking about their questions, because I'm sure there are several. So Josie, hello. Thanks for joining us today.
Kat's got her tongue now.
Josie, it sounded like you had something to say, and this is your chance. You can say anything you want to all of the students here.
What do you have to say about how the nurses care for you?
They're really nice and gentle, and they tell you what they're gonna do, and like in a good way, and don't just go for it.
Good. Josie, I have a very important question for you.
Yeah.
I have to know what you want to be when you grow up.
Maybe a nurse.
Maybe a nurse?
There you go.
I'll take it. I like it.
She's actually talked about that quite a bit lately because we have a hard time with sticks with Josie, like IV sticks and anything like that, because she has a vascular anomaly. That's what the lymphatic stuff is. And so IVs not only are intimidating for any kid, but hers are like weird, tiny, hard. So she's talked about being a nurse quite often because she likes the way some nurses handle things and the way some nurses don't. And so, you know, she's been saying that a bit. That or probably a farmer. Hang out
There
with
you go.
the cows. Zookeeper,
Two-
she just said.
Two very good professions. So I'm going to open it up to the floor. If anybody has any questions for Lynn and Ron, or for Josie, or for Jamie, anybody, go ahead and ask your question.
Silent
Cricket.
Question. But I also just wanted to say, like, thank you for sharing, both of you guys. That was a really, like, I know it's a hard story, but it was a really, like, inspirational one. And Ethan is truly a hero. So, and Josie, you're so cute. But just from, like, an educational purpose, I guess, I don't know if it's something you guys can answer, or my instructor. So Josie was 4 months old, and Ethan was 20. So obviously the whole liver wasn't going to fit. So did she get part of a liver? Is that how it works?
So Josie got a quarter of Ethan's liver and Alberta got 3/4 of it. So when they looked at it, this is how they explained to me, mind you, this is 10 years now. What they said to me was they had to look at the tubing of it, the piping of it. And then if they could see where a spot where they could connect it but they could still split it, then if they could do that, then they could give her a portion of it. And that's what they were looking to do with Patty. Actually, my sister-in-law was the one that they were really looking at to donate. So they had Patty going through all these tests and stuff, and they could easily split hers so that she could still have the chunk that she needed for hers to grow. Josie only has one lobe to her liver. So she'll never, livers have two. She will never have that. She will only ever have one.
And does that grow with her? The one lobe?
Yeah. So supposedly, yes. I mean, like I don't know what I'm looking at on the ultrasounds and what, but they do always feel, for where her liver is. And, it was a smaller chunk. It is supposed to grow with her. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, you learned something new. I'm telling you, she's learning as we go along too.
I have another question as well for Josie and Jamie. So again, thank you both of you for sharing your stories. It's very inspirational. It was very touching too. So Josie, I'm kind of curious, what is your daily life like? Do you have any like medications you have to take every day? And then do you play any sports? Are you able to go out and play or get involved around school at all?
So I'm homeschooled and I live on a farm. So my everyday life is outside with the animals, what you would picture.
Yeah.
And I take a bunch of medications morning and night. And right now I'm taking one in the afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the real world, if she didn't have lymphedema, she would only be taking tacrolimus at this point. And actually they were at one point, so there's been some studies with liver transplants that you can wean them off of their anti-rejection medication. And we were in the process of doing that because she caught molluscum. That's another thing. If you find molluscum on a transplant child, immediately make sure that they go to a dermatologist because their body cannot fight it off. You can hope it can, but don't let it happen to what happened to us. So anyway, so we were dealing with that. So they decided to lower her tacrolimus level on that, which was great. Because of her lymphedema though, and then with her getting sick after that, she's on a bunch of other medications for that. And then again, because of her lymphedema, she's on budesonide, which is a steroid. or Entocort is another name for it. And then she stopped growing when she started taking that. So now she's taking a hydrocortisone for her thyroid and, you know, like all the other fun stuff. So in real life, yes, she would only be taking one medication.
Oh, do I wish that was true?
Yeah, which would just be the tacrolimus. But yeah, it does progressively. You get sent home with, no joke, 20 medications, and when they're a baby, you've got what's the stuff for the thrush? I forget what it's called, whatever that's called, the medication that you use for thrush, and you have to swab it in their mouth, and you know, like there's all kinds of stuff. But then as their liver, you know, like she said, the different phases of rejection, like that first 2 weeks is really important, and then you have a month. So we were going down to CHOP daily. And then like once we got released, it was daily, and then it was every couple days, and then it was weekly, and then it was 2 weeks, and then it was monthly, and then it was 3 months. And then after 3 months, then it's 6 months. And then after 6 months, then it's a year. And we were at yearly visits for quite a while. Again, it's only recently that it's been more so. We've been down to CHOP all the time, but yeah. And daily life wise, I mean, school is totally, Alina, the one that just had the heart transplant, she's back at school already 40 days post-transplant, you know, like she's already, yeah, they had her heart transplant up and running. I mean, this kid has never ran a day in her life, and she's up running and doing all this crazy stuff. So post-transplant is really, really amazing. Just the things that, you know, that if everything goes swimmingly, like, especially like with Alina, if everything goes swimmingly, then it's a total mind blown situation. And even with her, it was still a total mind blown situation. Like, I wish you guys could have seen the pumpkin to the squash within, no joke, 3 hours. Like, it's just amazing what the body can do. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And Josie, what's your favorite farm animal?
Cow.
Cow.
Thank you.
So
she
I
does
wanted
like
to
to do
ask-
art.
I wanted
Sorry.
to ask Lynn and Ron a question too. So Jamie, you had mentioned you're not sure why people don't all want to get together. I can only imagine that it would be very hard for some people to know that the huge blessing and amazing gift that they got was at the expense of someone else. And to me, in my way of thinking, it would be incredibly hard to meet the people who had to give the most precious gift of all, right? But Lynn and Ron, I wonder if you can comment a little bit about how knowing the recipients has helped you to make it through such an awful event in your lives.
Because we get to see Ethan. That's why those connections are so important to me. Like the drummer. I mean, that God showing those little things like connections with names, he still lives on.
And Josie likes to draw. That was a big thing that Ethan liked to do as well. And I like what Jamie said about always remember you're taking care of my child. And I think we want people to always remember Ethan. He's still here in our hearts and in spirit and in parts of him in other bodies, which is surreal to even think of. But we don't ever want to forget him. He may have only spent 20 years with us, but that was the time that he was given. And those are 20 really precious years. So if we took that time and we could forward it to help others live a better life, to us, meeting the people that became the recipients, we didn't have a doubt in the world.
Yeah,
we were sure.
We wanted to meet everybody.
And we met, Paul, a lot of people who are saying, look, that door's closed. I don't even want to talk about it.
Even our doctor was suggesting us not to do it.
Yeah,
he's like, what if you meet the liver person
and you don't
like them?
I'm like, that's crazy.
It's like,
you have to go in with it with the right idea that what is done. It cannot be changed. But hopefully this donation will lead to better friendships and blessings and more family.
And it really helped when we heard Jamie had faith. That was like sealing the deal.
Yep.
It was like you're on the same page. You have faith, and everything's in God's control. So having God in your life, I think you accept things easier.
Well, I agree. I think it's been very inspiring to hear everybody's story. Anybody else have any questions? I know we've run over, but I'm sure that our speakers don't mind. Anybody else have any questions? You're getting all sorts of thanks and praise on the chat. I don't know if you can see the chat. Down at the bottom of your of the Zoom window is a chat screen. Or a chat button. You can click on that and you can see that people have been very thankful for your message today. And I am too. I really appreciate it. This is the third time I've heard Lynn and Ron speak. They do a terrific job every time. And Josie and Jamie, I certainly appreciate your contributions today. I think it was
Anytime.
For a
Anytime.
Well,
for a
here I'll
nicely
leave you
rounded
with. Go ahead. What? I'll leave you with a story. We're so thankful for nurses. When I was 20 years old, I was in a bad car accident and met Lynn. And on the third date, I asked her to marry me.
And I said yes.
So nurses are very important to us.
That they are. I met a nurse. I met a nurse too.
The group in Hershey thanks you.
Hello?
Hello?
She just said the group at Hershey thanks us. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a room full of people there.
Yeah, we have the unwritten rule, like, you know how with your mom, like when your mom says you have to do this, you know, kind of thing, you can't really say no. Not that you would want to say no, but we have a mutual unwritten rule. Like if you're going to go speak to somebody, if you can be there, you need to be there. And that's how I think our whole friendship and family relationship has been that way with Lynn and Ron. Like we have a story to tell that apparently is, you know, unique, and we love it. We love that we have them as family, and it's you know, important because you don't always get to see the other side. Like you don't get to see both sides of everything. Not a whole lot of people in, you know, nursing school or in any sort of medical realm get to see like this is what it was for the recipient and this is what it was for the donor, and how complete opposite they were, yet still all following the same path. So
that's healing for both sides.
Heals, yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Paul?
Yes.
I did forget too, quite a few years ago, our son was in Lehigh Valley Cedar Crest at the neuro ICU. And we all agreed, Ron and I and our daughter Rachel, and I believe Paul, Jamie, and Josie, and a representative from Gift of Life, we all came together and showed them that we were moving forward, that we had met each other, and that we were doing okay. And we wanted to thank the staff, being the neuro doc that took care of Ethan. His name was Dr. Sandu. Different staff members like, oh gosh, I remember you guys.
Yeah.
And that was a really cool experience as well, because we wanted to thank them for being there at such a really rough time.
And the other cool thing we did, we moved out to Arizona for a short while. And when we came back, we had Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah,
at CHOP.
I forgot about that.
With Jamie and Paul and Alberta and Ellie. No, Alberta couldn't make it, but we all got together for Thanksgiving at CHOP Hospital. That was really cool too. Gift of Life, they say.
Yeah, Gift of Life House. Yeah,
Gift of Life.
Mm-hmm.
I have CHOP on my mind now.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.